Today I'm going to be using my favorite markers and showing you how I did this drawing of a Bonanza daylily.
Hi, Shannon Rowe Jackson here from Caution Artists at Play, and today I will be working with markers. More specifically, I will be working with the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pens. These are brush pens and they're pigment-based India ink, which is one reason why I chose them, because they are actually light fast. So I want to say that this video is not sponsored in any way by Faber-Castell. All these products are ones that I've bought myself or that friends and family have bought me. This is all my own opinion. I just think that these are a really great product and I love to use them and wanted to share it with you. So basically, I am an art supply fiend. And I'm always looking for fun and different art supplies to play with. And I like to work in a variety of media so that I don't get bored. And every time I get a new medium, I like to try it in my style, of course. And I have always been intrigued by markers, and even though they tend to have a reputation for being for more illustrative styles or more abstract, or a lot of times they are advertised for sketching, I really wanted to try them in my style. And I have worked with markers in the past. These are not necessarily a new product for me, but I got a different paper than what I usually use with these markers, and I wanted to try it. And this is the Arches Hot Press watercolor paper. I got it in a pad, and I obviously got it recently so that I could work in watercolor with it. But every time I get a new paper, I like to try it in all the different mediums I work with, and so now I decided to try it with marker. And so far, I actually really like this paper for marker. These are more of a water-based marker. They are not an alcohol-based marker, so they have a reputation for not blending as easily. One of the advantages to alcohol markers is that they blend so beautifully, and so it can be a little bit more difficult when working with a water-based marker to get that kind of effect without it kind of tearing into your paper. So it's really important that when you work with a marker like this that you find a good paper. And so I am always constantly looking for a good surface to use these markers on. But I will be sticking with these markers as opposed to alcohol markers because these are light fast, and alcohol markers by nature are not light fast. They're usually dye based, and dye by nature is not light fast, and I like to be able to sell my originals. So even though I do have some alcohol markers, I have some of the Prismacolor and I have some of the Spectrum Noir, I wanted to find a marker that I can use and sell my original artwork with and not worry about it fading out. These are completely archival. From the website of Faber-Castell, they tell us how archival they are. Let me find the description here so that I can read it to you. The reason why I'm always looking for archival things is because it takes a lot of time to do artwork, and I don't want to waste my time if it's something that's going to fade out on the wall. And a lot of these materials are expensive. So the website says that they offer an odorless, permanent, and waterproof inks that are vibrant and will not bleed through paper. The pigmented India inks are light, fast, acid-free, and pH neutral. And these are actually less expensive than Copic markers. I know that you can get them in different sets. They have the wallet sets that usually come in like 4 or 5, something like that. That's how I started. And they have themed sets. So they have like a landscape one. They have a set of, I think they have a set of portrait ones that I have. And that's how I started getting these, because it's cheaper to do it that way than to just get a huge set if you want to try it out. And they also offer them for like individual, open stock, and they're about $2.49 at Blick. I will link some of the stuff in the description below. I'll link all my materials. And again, this is not sponsored. I just figured I would let you guys know, pricing and things like that. And these actually do have the light fast ratings on the side of each pen. So that's a little bit more about the material itself. Basically, I am working on this flower because I wanted to play with my markers and test them out on this paper. And so far, I think that this paper is one of my favorites to use with these markers. Typically, I actually really like to use sanded paper, surprisingly, with my markers because they blend so easy on sanded paper, surprisingly. However, obviously, sanded paper is going to be a little bit more rough on the brush nibs. So I've been trying to find other smoother papers for that. And that's why I wanted to try the arches. And I was pleasantly surprised. It does kind of felt the paper up a little bit, and by felt, I mean the paper kind of feels like felt after, because this is actually a cotton paper. So it is, kind of a fabric-y paper to begin with, and it does kind of pill it up a little bit, but not nearly as bad as it would on a cheaper paper or on regular sketchbook paper. It doesn't eat through the paper the way it would if you were working like on printer paper or sketchbook paper. So it's a really rugged paper, and it actually took this medium really well. Another paper that I also like to use is the 400 series mixed media paper by Strathmore. So there are options out there. And these markers will blend if you have the right surface and if you have the right techniques, as you can see here. Sometimes I am blending them with the marker themselves, and then sometimes you'll see me come in and use a tool to blend them. And I think I'm using a wand tool for blending that is similar to the soft tools, but it's actually by Jane Davenport. But I think that if you also have the soft tools that people use for pan pastels, that would work similarly. Looks like a makeup applicator, and you'll see me use that throughout the piece here, like right there. I just used it. And that actually seems to be a little bit easier on the paper. So a lot of times I'll lay down my colors and then I'll go in with that tool and blend it out rather than using the brush nib to blend things out, because the brush nib will dig into the paper a little bit more. And these all have the brush nibs, but they also offer fine liners, and they also have like a full range of fine liners and other drawing tools in, their black India ink as well, which is how I started using these. So they offer a lot of different fun sets and a lot of different nib sizes. They also offer some really big chunky markers, which I have a couple of, right? Like I have a white one that you'll see me use here. I also have one that's in a skin tone. So I'm working very similarly as I would any other piece. I started with my background and then I'm going in and working on the subject, but you will see me go back and forth and do touch-ups on the background as I see fit. These are transparent, so other than the white, I have a white one that's not transparent, and that is awesome. It's a lifesaver. It works great for adding highlights, it works great for corrections, and it also works great to mix right in with your other colors, so that way there you can lighten a color. But most of these are transparent. So what I do is you'll see me go in a lot and put down the lines on the petals, and then I'll come in over it with the same color and layer it right on top, and it will darken the color. So if you want to do, shadows, you can build them up in layers just by even using the same color over and over. Of course, the lighter colors will only get so dark that way, but you can darken them just by layering. I'm coming in and putting those details. I do a lot of negative drawing. I'm drawing around those details in the center of the flower. And I do end up going in and masking out all the details in the middle, which I should have done to begin with, but I just got so excited that I started working on them because I wanted to see how fine of a detail I could get. And I actually could get pretty fine detail with these brush pens. I would like to get some of the fine liners in different colors as well for later on. But for now, these brush pens work just fine to do fine detail and to do large areas. And you'll see me use some unexpected colors as well. I have a warm gray that I use a lot in the shadow areas because it already has a little bit of a yellow tint to it. And I will use some magentas and things like that to create shadows as well. I'm just going back and forth to create some detail there. Trying to get in behind that detail because this is before I masked it. And a lot of this is just a big experiment. Most of my artwork is. I jump right in and I just start working with the materials and see what happens. And then I will fix my mistakes if I need to, and that's how we learn. I definitely learned a lot about this material, this, medium in general from doing this piece. This is probably only my third or fourth, maybe fifth piece in marker. This is obviously, like I said, it was my first on this paper, so I really wanted to get to know how it works on this surface. I love this though. Markers are so vibrant and flowers are perfect for this medium. because flowers are so vibrant. If you look at my finished piece up in the corner, you can see how vibrant it actually is. That is a scan of it, so it is a more accurate representation of what the drawing actually looks like. For some reason, my cameras, when I am in the studio, the lights tend to look bluer on camera, so it makes everything a little bit more dull when I'm recording, because I have daytime lights in my studio, and they just don't, I don't know, they don't come across as accurately on camera as they should. When I'm working, I have an accurate view of what I'm doing, but for some reason on camera, it doesn't translate well. So there you'll see me going in and doing the lines on the petals. I'm paying very close attention to the shape of the petals and the direction of the petals when I'm putting those parallel lines in. I want to make sure my lines are curved because these are not straight and rigid petals, obviously. They go off into different directions, they curve, they come out from the center towards us, and then they curve back around under the flower a little bit. So really want to keep perspective in mind when you're drawing flowers, because they are three-dimensional and they do have lines in them, and perspective works really well when you are drawing flowers. So I'm making sure that those lines are going to be, you know, in the proper perspective, but that they're also going with the shape of the petal as well, and that they're not too straight. And I'm using curved motions to represent the three-dimensionalness of those petals. I'm just going back and forth between my dark and light. So I'll put down, sometimes I'll just put down my darker color and I'll blend it out with a lighter color. Sometimes I put my lighter color in first and then darken it up with itself after. It's just a variety of techniques. And I think I do each petal a little bit differently because this is my first time doing a lily in marker. And so I really wanted to just try different ways and see what worked. And you'll see me going through and darkening things gradually. That's one thing that I really love is layering, and they work a little bit better if you wait for them to dry a little bit if you're going to layer over them so that it doesn't damage the paper. And I found that I was able to lift them a little bit when they were mostly dry. I was able to lift them just slightly enough to blend edges if I needed to, which was good because these are a permanent marker. So once they're dry, it can be, you know, hard to remove them. And that petal had a shadow on it, and it was kind of an awkward shadow, so I had a harder time with that petal. But I think it ended up coming out well in the end. It just took a little bit of extra work to get the look that I was looking for. And it being darker in the background really helped to have the details in the middle stand out better. And that red, I actually go back and forth between that and a magenta, depending on the type of lighting. So this flower, I'm working from my own reference photo, and it was like a really sunny day. So some of the petals are in full sunlight. Some of them have sunlight coming from a little bit behind them, like the main petal in the middle. And then some of them are in shadow and have like all three. Like the lower petal, the big lower petal, ends up having like 3 different light sources happening, because you can have some that is full light, and then there's some that seems like the sunlight's coming in from behind, and then some of it's in shadow. So that just makes for an all-around more interesting image, I think, when you can get that contrast in there and have the fun different lights. So as you can see, the parts in the middle I have just masked out. That's why it kind of looks like bluish green. It's actually my masking fluid. And I did use the Molotow masking fluid pen, which I have mentioned in previous videos. I will also link that in the description below. I'm just going in with that warm gray, going back and forth with a warm gray and a cream color. And those worked really well with these colors. So you always want to find colors. You don't always have to work with the colors that you know, like, oh, this is a yellow flower. Usually there's going to be more than just yellow in the flower. There's going to be some grays, there could be some purples, depending on the type of lighting, there actually could be, you know, a whole myriad of colors within those yellow petals. So I just went with my reference photo and saw what was fit. And of course, it's not exactly like my reference photo. I do change things up a bit, but it is always nice to have a reference if you're trying to do anything semi-realistic or remotely realistic. You usually want to have a reference at hand. Going back with that gray again to put those shadows in on that petal. And I'm kind of going and outlining it, and then later on I blended out. I wanted to test how much I could blend out those outlines, and I was able to actually do that pretty well. But typically speaking, this can be unforgiving when it comes to that. So you just want to be careful when you are doing your line work to make sure that, like, especially if you're working with realism that's not actually going to have technical outlines on it. You just want to be careful that you're doing it lightly enough that you're able to blend it in with other colors. Because I tend to do that a lot. I tend to like outline and draw things in before I actually do the actual coloring. But it worked out well. I was able to blend really surprisingly well on this paper, and I'm very excited about it. And I'm super excited that if I need to or if I want to, I can sell this piece because I know that it's going to be archival. You don't have to have the most expensive materials to try techniques like this, and you don't have to have the most expensive paper. Arches does tend to be a little bit on the pricier side, like I said. The Strathmore Mixed Media 400 series works really well with these markers as well, and that's fairly inexpensive. And it's just a matter of trying different techniques and seeing what works best for you. Like I said, I happened to buy this paper because I wanted it for my watercolor paper, like, you know, obviously it is a watercolor paper, so I wanted it for watercolors. But since I have it, I want to see how markers worked on it. And it does help to have a good paper when you're working with water-based markers. Another marker that I really love is the Winsor & Newton pigment-based, and those are all light fast as well. And those work well with the Pitt pens. I have done that in previous pieces. I think the butterfly one that I did on sanded paper that I had a video for, I also used the pigment markers. Look how bright that color is. Oh, I love it. I went through with my lighter and more pale colors and my grays, and then when I came in, I glazed a bright, bright yellow over it, and it just gave the whole thing a nice pop. That's what I love. Like, obviously, markers are transparent, so they're great for glazing. A lot of the techniques that I use in other mediums, I'm able to use with this medium. So don't think just because this is a different medium or any type of medium is different than what you usually use that you can't use the same techniques. I always, every time I get a new medium, like I said, I like to try it in my style. And so I usually do use techniques from different mediums when I'm trying a new medium. So glazing is typically thought of as a painting style, but you can obviously use it with markers. When I'm coloring with markers, I tend to do it in a similar manner that I use my colored pencils. I don't just sit there and do straight strokes. I usually do very small circular motions, and that tends to blend out more easily and not leave any streaks in my marker work. So that's something else that I recommend when you are actually laying down the shading and the coloration. If you don't want to have streaks in your work, use small circular motions just like you would in colored pencil. And it doesn't leave any blotches, or it leaves less blotches than what you would expect from marker. Going in with that white Pitt pen and lightening things up, that is very opaque, and it's just, oh, it's great for, you know, corrections and highlights and things like that. And there's that gray again. So that part of the petal actually had part of the background showing through because it was transparent. So it had part of the dark background showing through, and the creases ended up being lighter. So in parts of the petal, the creases are darker, but in this part, the creases themselves were lighter, and the in-between, you could actually see, you know, a little bit of shadow coming through from that leafy green background. And I used a pale blue to do that because I knew that once I put yellow over it, it would green it a little bit, but it was pale enough that it was almost a gray, and so it wasn't so saturated that it turned the flower itself green. And I'm laying in that gray again for my shadows on this petal. And again, I'm paying close attention to those lines and the direction of those lines to help accurately show the shape of that petal. This was just a delight to work on. I had so much fun with this, and it was so quick. If you are someone like me who usually works with like colored pencil, oh my, this medium is so much faster, and it was so much fun. I'm definitely going to do more marker work as I have time. And as you can tell, I've been doing a lot of different mediums lately. I have the summer off from classes, so I'm taking advantage and playing with a lot of my art materials that I don't get the chance to play with very often. So that's why you've been seeing so many different videos from me lately. And that's going to continue for a couple videos at least, because I have a couple more projects that I want to work on in materials that I don't usually get to use. I think I'm going to have a gouache one coming up, and I'm also going to be working in pastels soon. So that's something for you to keep an eye out on if it's something that you're interested in seeing. And the shadows blended out pretty smoothly in this petal because there was a little bit less detail than I needed. Really, the most important thing was the contrast, the shadow and the light. I really, really wanted to portray the light accurately here. And now I'm starting to finish up. Just putting in some final touches, darkening things up and lightening them. And this is my final piece. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and have a great day. Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please hit subscribe. Also, if you're interested in seeing more of my artwork, I'm on social media, so check out the links in the description below.